stupid jerk. Dad, we have it on video. Stupid jerk, Dad, he's pushed the bike away, pulled his little bloody knee up against his chest. My Mikey is done. I said, no, son. That was amazing. Look how far you rode that. Come on, let's try again. It would be weeks before my Mikey would finally learn to ride his bike. I remember the day that he did it, and as teachers, we all hold these kinds of moments. Oh man, you can give me 50 rotten school days of teaching, but you give me 1 hour where something like this happens. When my Mikey took off and he rode that bike. He took off around the block, and he had figured it out. Of course, we'll say he learned, right? He went on to do great things in his life, but in many ways, so much of it started with his ability to understand all learning involves fear and pain. And here's the thing. We as teachers have to say this out loud. We're going to help them by taking their training wheels off. And we're going to encourage them to go for the ride. But we know, without question, they're going to fall, and it's going to hurt. And when they fall and it's going to hurt, we know who they're going to blame. Notice my Mikey. He did not blame himself for forgetting how to use his brakes. He did not blame the city engineer for putting the curb in the wrong place. No. Right? He blames me. Why? Stupid jerk dad. Why? Well, I'm the one who took his training wheels off. And there is the key for us in terms of understanding learning as teachers. We take their training wheels off. We encourage them to go and to ride, knowing full well they're going to fall. And it's going to hurt. And then we are the ones that are there to say, let's go. That was amazing. Now, let's do it again and again and again. And as parents and as teachers, we get the joy, and it is a joy, of that level of pain and suffering. Now, obviously in our Big Five, we talk about Theodicy and the question of pain and suffering. Why did this happen for me? Not why did this happen to me. We'll obviously come back to it a number of times. The integral teacher, to speak of Theodicy, the integral teacher, as we have said it in our prior lecture, is always engaging in what I call the 3-5 paradigm. When I'm dealing with students in room 303, I'm always considering the 3-5 paradigm. The 3, well, first of all, there's me. That is to say, I got to take care of myself before I can ever work with my students or anybody outside of my classroom. So I got to worry about me, my energy levels, my health, that 4 quadrants. I got to take care of my body, I got to take care of my mind, I got to be paying attention to the culture that I work in, right? Okay. Obviously, from there I move to my students. Once I can take care of myself, then I can take care of my students. If I get this backwards, I'm in trouble. If I give too much of my energies to my students and I don't have enough for myself, here's the problem. Can I be as good in December as I am in September? Can I be as good in May as I am in February? See, there's my challenge. My challenge to myself is, first I have to take care of myself, then I take care of my students, and then finally, and I don't want to forget this, outside of 303, I have a whole nother community, beginning with my colleagues, my administration, and obviously everybody that lives not only in this town, but the rest of this world. I have to think about them as well. Now, when I think about myself, my students, and those outside, I think about it from a paradigm of at least 5, what we call in 303, the Big 5. I'm always thinking about epistemology, that is to say, what can I know? What am I sure of? What am I not so sure of? And we argue in 303 that it makes the most sense to not have an absolutist position about our epistemological positions. I'm right and you're wrong. There are moments in time when that has to be true. But we prefer the fallibilist position. And I hope that the spirit of all of my comments here will be in the fallibilist paradigm. That is to say, I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. And I'm very happy to say about anything I will say in this set of talks. I could be wrong about what I'm saying. Okay? I could be wrong. And I'm very happy to admit the potentiality of that. Ontologically, our second of the Big 5, we're always asking about, who am I? I mean, obviously, as we said with our quadrants project, I know I'm a body, but I also have a mind. That's different from my brain. I can cut my head open and look in my brain. I'm not going to find my mind there. But I have to know that I have a mind. You got to have a mind to argue there is no mind. So I'm always worrying ontologically about who I am, who my students are, those outside of room 303, who they are, not only in terms of their body, but also their mind and, of course, their spirit. I've got to take into consideration all 3. The second 2 of the Big 5, numbers 3 and 4, go together as well. Psychologically, what are the motives and the motivations? How do I deal with that fear that I know is coming when I know I'm going to fall? What are the reasons that I do what I do? It is a simple question to ask any teacher who is either about to get into the classroom or has been in the classroom. What are your chief fears, and how do you deal with them? And how do they manifest themselves in any number of ways, both to your students as well as to those outside your classroom? And then obviously sociology is another one of our important ologies, because we got to think about not just the individual psyche, but also the collection. It is fascinating to watch how students watch. If you're a teacher, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Especially on the first day. Any high school teacher will tell you on the first day, there's always going to be one student that's going to challenge you. Why? Well, they just want to know. They want to know how are you constructed? How are you going to respond the very first time an obstacle hits your classroom? Of course, think of it. You're not only dealing with a single student in that moment, most of the time. You're dealing with an entire group. So one student will come in and make one comment, but you got 20 other students that are watching, looking, seeing what's going on. That's the sociological question. And what is it that motivates groups to behave in ways often individuals won't? We have to consider this, obviously, if we're going to be an effective teacher. And then finally, as we've said before, the question of theodicy. It is the ultimate question. It is the question of all questions. Why must there be pain and suffering in this world? Why must learning, I once had a student ask me this, why must learning always involve fear and pain? It is the question of theodicy. It takes us back, we've mentioned Plato already, it takes us back to many classic and ancient texts, which is why we say the new is the new, the NEW is the KNEW. It's why Milton wrote Paradise Lost, the text that we've given full arguments for and explanations for at learnstrong.net. The question is, in the end, can I ever get to a place as a teacher when I have challenges and pain and suffering in my classroom and in my life? Can I ever stop asking, why did this happen to me? And learn to ask, why did this happen for me? That is a process. It's possible that we're going to spend some time asking how that specifically works for us. So the real question then is, what really matters to the integral teacher? The one who dares to teach, as we have named this series of talks. And I want to share 12 ideas that I believe matter to me in room 303. Now, obviously, there's way more than this, okay? But these are the ideas that I will construct our series of talks around. For me, in room 303, and I'm very happy now to be able to share this with you. I think in order of priority, it works like this for me. And I'm going to give a set of talks on each one of these, so I'm not going to explain any of them now. But I just kind of want you to have a sense of where we're headed. If you're really going to be an integral teacher, as we will define it, if you're really going to dare to teach, I think you have to consider, first and foremost, honesty. Number 2, forgiveness. 3, freedom. And from there, we'll go, number 4, to love, compassion. After there, we've got to talk about justice and hope. We'll see them as together. And then number 6, we'll talk about courage. We've already mentioned that word. At number 7, I want to talk about joy in the classroom, something that's so often forgotten. Because if it's not joy-filled for you and for your students and for those outside of your classroom, something is fundamentally wrong. From there, we'll go to peace, something that it seems fewer and fewer of us have less and less of. And then we'll talk about discipline at number 9. I think it's an important one. And then we're going to use a word at number 10, purity or intentionality, and we'll talk a little bit about how I interpret each one of these words, by the way, I will define possibly in a different way than maybe you would render those words initially. And then at 11, I'm going to talk about grace and mercy. I think those two things have to go together. And then finally, and so significantly, I think number 12, we've got to talk about gratitude. And as instructors, we have to be grateful for the opportunities that we have to be able to do the very thing that we do. With that in mind now, I'll go to a final story. I had been in room 303 by the year 2000, over a decade. I had worked through any number of challenges, and I remember I was headed on my way to do a gig somewhere, I think it was in Japan that time, and I was on my way, and I had just picked up a book that a colleague who knew me well recommended to me, written by the Dalai Lama, Ethics for the New Millennium, a book that truly blew me away. I think you can still pick it up now 22 years later, and it still challenges you. And it's there in that remarkable book that the Dalai Lama said 2 important things to me that have stayed with me for a very long time. The first thing he said was a statement of what he considered to be true. The most religious man, you could argue, one of the most religious men on the planet, says about the 21st century, young people are losing their ability to believe in religion as a root for their ethics. It's leaving. And it's maybe not going to come back. Certainly not in the old ways. And I was just blown away by that idea. I mean, what kind of deeply religious person will say that out loud? And yet he was having the honesty to say it. And then, more compelling, the second thing he said in this amazing book was, it is to the teachers that we now must turn on the planet. Because young people are going to watch them to try to find some way to ethical moral conduct. It is to the teachers that he challenged us to live a life worthy of not imitation, but emulation. And I remember reading that and the challenge that that brought to me in my beyond 10th year of teaching. And I began to ask the fundamental question, what does it mean to be that kind of teacher? Later I would call that kind of teacher the integral teacher. And as I now turn to the first of these key concepts, I realize that in the end, we're going to have to be honest. Honest with ourselves, honest with our students, honest with those who are outside. But what exactly does that mean? Well, we'll come back to enjoy that set of considerations here in a bit. As I finish this lecture, because I promised you guys that we're going to be messing around with text, I love to go back to Whitman, his Song of the Open Road. And I hope that as we begin this set of comments now, beginning with, as we've said, honesty, that these words will resonate for us. Afoot and light-hearted, I take to the open road. Healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me, leading wherever I choose. Henceforth, I ask not good fortune. I myself am good fortune. Henceforth, I whimper no more, postpone no more, need nothing. Done with indoor complaints, libraries, querulous criticism, strong and content. I travel the open road. The earth, that is sufficient. I do not want the constellations any nearer. I know they are very well where they are. I know they suffice for those who belong to them. Still, here, I carry my old delicious burdens. I carry them, men and women. I carry them with me wherever I go. I swear it's impossible for me to get rid of them. I am filled with them and will fill them in return. To the conclusion of Song of the Open Road, allons. Let's go. I love the word. Let's use it throughout this series. The road is before us. It is safe. I've tried it. My own feet have tried it well. Be not detained. Let the paper remain on the desk unwritten and the book on the shelf unopened. Let the tools remain in the workshop. Let the money remain unearned. Let the school stand. Mind not the cry of the teacher. Let the preacher preach in his pulpit. Let the lawyer plead in the court and the judge expound the law. Camarada, I give you my hand. I give you my love, more precious than money. I give you myself before preaching or law. Will you give me yourself? Will you come travel with me? Shall we stick by each other as long as we live? I want to challenge you to return. Let's spend a few moments asking, what is it, heart, that matters to dare to be a teacher? Thank you.